Have you ever had an awkward moment in a conversation? Now, when you work with teenagers, this happens sometimes, and you can ask a student their name and they just kind of look at you, or maybe you dig in and ask about their day or what their favorite food is. Most times you'll get an answer, but there are those times when they can just look at you and you hear crickets in the background and it is super awkward. So let's try an awkward moment right now. Here's a little joke. So little Johnny is at Sunday school. The teacher asks, "Class, what is this a photo of?" She calls him little Johnny, and he timidly says, "Well, bushy tail, furry coat, has an acorn, looks like a squirrel, but being that this is Sunday school, I'm going to say Jesus." Well, the reason that moment is awkward is, first, it is such a dumb joke that you're probably even wondering, is it a joke? And number two, you just don't know what to say in response. Awkward moments are typically created by these moments when we just don't know what to say. And this happens sometimes in prayer, especially when we're just learning how to pray. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about 3 things that can help you as you pray to not have those awkward moments when you just don't know what to do or say. So the first thing we're going to do to avoid those awkward prayer moments is to start by being thankful. When you start to recite to God the things that He's done in your life, what it does is it creates an opportunity for you to have a conversation with Him that can be deep and impactful and meaningful. Imagine someone bought you something that you really, really wanted. When you saw them, imagine you just walked up to them and you said, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much. This is exactly what I wanted." Do you think in that moment that your friend would just look at you and not say anything? How awkward would that be if they just sat there and stared at you? Well, you should know that whenever you express thanksgiving to God, He's going to respond. He wants to speak back to you. Approaching God with a grateful heart, it not only pleases God, but it opens your heart to hear from Him in that moment. And even more, you aren't just reminding God, you're reminding yourself. And what that does is it opens your heart to God even more because you can see His love for you and how He's interacted with you. So if you're having trouble with prayer, just think of 5 things God has done for you. 5 things, and begin thanking Him for them. You know what? Don't forget to give Him some time to speak to you about those things. So one of the things that people say all the time is to use a formula like the Lord's Prayer or like the prayer star that we talked about a couple weeks back. Some use a devotional, something to help kickstart their prayer times. And look, I think that's a great idea. But sometimes I think we can get so focused on the formula that we have a hard time with the actual prayer. Well, the truth is, when we speak to our friends, we don't go into it with some kind of formula in mind, right? We don't walk up with like 5 points that we make sure we hit before we really get into the conversation with them. Now, look, I'm not saying for 1 second that it's bad to use a formula. I think you should if that works. Use it if it works, whatever works. But if you're having a hard time praying because you're so diligently trying to follow some formula that you forget to pray, then forget the formula. So the second thing what I want to tell you tonight is simply this. Just talk to God like He's your friend. How would you communicate with your friend? How would you start the conversation? If you were mad about something, what would you say? Well, if you were excited and super happy about something, well, how would you respond? What would you say to them? We need to be sure that we're reverent to God, that we're respectful, but we need to remember that He is just a loving Father to us, His children. He doesn't want some type of stiff mechanical conversation with you. He wants a relationship with you. He wants to talk to you. So when you take time to pray, you don't have to be all mechanical. You don't have to be a robot, right? Just talk to Him like you would talk to a buddy. Be honest with Him. Tell Him how you feel. If you start doing this, you're going to find that your relationship with Him, really every aspect of your life with Him, that it becomes way less liturgical and mechanical and way more comfortable. So lastly, I know that it really can be difficult to start your prayer times at times, and sometimes there's this mindset that you say like, "Oh, I got to do this the right way. I have to do it the right way." So starting something by itself can be difficult, and really praying is different. What do I say? How do I say it? These are the things we think. So here's something you can do to help get you going in your prayers. Start in the middle. Maybe you have a formula that you're trying to follow, like the Lord's Prayer, which is essentially enter with thanksgiving and praise, praying for God's will, prayers for provision, prayers for forgiveness, prayers to forgive others, prayers for safety, and then ending with praise. Well, rather than get so focused on the formula, just start with forgiveness. God, I know this week I've done some really stupid things and I'm asking you to forgive me. Or maybe, God, I have a big day today and I really need your guidance. I know some people might say, but the Bible says start with praise. Well, yes, it does, and that's fine. But again, I want you to focus on praying. whatever that looks like, not necessarily the formula. So whether you start at the beginning of the formula, the middle, or the end, or if you don't use the formula at all, just pray. So the main point tonight is that you dive into prayer. Let nothing hold you back. Let nothing stop you from spending time with God. You need this time with God. You need it like your lungs need air. So let's identify the reasons prayer is tough and then focus on ways to overcome them. So if you can use one of these prayer hacks that we talked about above, great. Whatever you do, pray, all right? All right, so before we break up into groups, let me just remind you to take this time to dig in, right? Dig in during your small groups. Be sure to share with the group. You never know, something you might say might change someone else's life forever. So, and the second thing is also just, if you make some type of decision for Christ, or if you identify a next step that you need to take, look, we want to rejoice with you. So please tell your small group leader. And then finally, remember, we are better together. So if you're going through anything, please don't be afraid to tell somebody about it. We love you. We want God's best for you. No condemnation, no shade, just love. All right, let's get into our small groups, all right? God bless you guys.